We are here live today with Cesar Mojica. Cesar, the Summer Challenge winner. So, Cesar won the Summer Challenge with 17 pounds in 5 weeks, not 15 weeks, 5 weeks. And it was amazing to see Cesar come out of basically nowhere because I was like, I was rooting for Caesar for a very long time, and I was waiting to see him just go out and take this, and that's exactly what he did. So welcome, Caesar, for being here today.
Thank you.
Um, let's go ahead and get started, and let's talk a little bit about. First of all, let's talk about the summer challenge, how it went, and then we'll go a little back into the story and start from the beginning. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling great. It was hard, to be honest, because of all the food. It was different, taking the food in and just sticking with it and just going through with it, because the calorie count was way low. So I was something I was not used to, but it was fun. I liked it. I enjoyed it.
Okay. Now, when you say calorie was low, is that because you were overeating before, or you weren't really tracking? Why is that?
Both. I was probably overeating, and I wasn't tracking. I wasn't tracking the count. I was just throwing, healthy, but not even using the scale, and just throwing food out there. And yeah, it wasn't what I was supposed to be doing.
Yeah, it sounds like the word healthy. I hear that a lot by people, right? And it's very interesting to hear what healthy means to a lot of people. And I think part of it is also the marketing in the food industry. Right now, we get bags of chips with 5 grams of protein highlighted, and obviously, people relate protein to health because we hear it so much in the
Mm-hmm.
industry now. And people immediately brain goes to like, oh, well, that's a healthy option. And that's a big thing that we see a lot when people are trying to lose weight and we start going over their food diaries. They're like, well, I'm eating these healthy chips, I'm eating these healthy bars, I'm eating these healthy processed foods, and that's what it really comes down to. Most of their food becomes processed because it's all packaged instead of sticking to the whole foods. When you talk about healthy foods, is that something that you were referring to, or were you just talking about like maybe chicken with some refried beans or
Well, no, the thing I was eating like chicken, rice, salads and stuff, but it was just I was overdoing it. Like the
overdoing
amounts were like they were pretty big amounts. And when I started doing the challenge, and Laura started helping me with like the dieting and she was cooking the food, like it was immediately a big change. The portions were like this tiny, and I was like, wait, what? So
it?
yeah, I mean, it's not that I was like eating like you said,
Processed food.
processed food. It was like I was eating just way too much
Yeah.
food.
Yeah, I think that's another big realization that a lot of people get. You compare yourself to somebody else and you're like, oh, I could eat that portion, or I'm just very hungry
Hmm.
and I serve myself a big portion. And I think it's also cultural. As I remember growing up, and I used to have big plates of food, right?
Hmm.
In
Yeah.
my household, we were big meat eaters, so there was always a big portion of meat, which I'm very grateful for because now that we know all this science and we know about nutrition, we know that protein is very important. So, but in my household, there was always like a big plate of meat, always rice, some type of bean, some type of refried bean, and maybe like 10 tortillas.
Well, yeah, that's the same thing in my house, and the problem is that like since forever, my mom and dad they both cook, and
Mm.
and I grew up enjoying food, so I think that was one of my problems too. Like I enjoy food, like I like to eat, like I just enjoy it. But yeah, like as a kid, I would sit down and I would have 12, 13 tortillas
Yeah,
in one meal,
yeah,
plus whatever the meal was.
right.
So yeah, I grew up like that.
Now, did you find yourself at a young age having any weight problems, or were you very active playing sports, and so it never really mattered?
Uh, I During junior high, I did started. to gain weight just drastically, and like between seventh and eighth grade, I started gaining weight, and then I started playing soccer, and I continued playing soccer throughout high school and stuff. So my weight just dropped. So you can say I was so and so like in shape,
Yeah.
but then after high school, it went
Yeah.
back up. It's like I stopped playing, and then it just all the weight I had lost just started going up.
Yeah, you see that a lot. You see it a lot with high school students, right? Some go into college, and obviously we call it the freshman 15. I don't know if you've heard that term, but mainly every time a lot of freshmen go into college for the first time because they're living away from home, they're not used to their parents cooking meals anymore. They're studying, they're always busy, they tend to drink more, and their activity drops, right? They all put 15, 20 pounds in that first year, and it happens a lot. You don't have to go to college. It happens to basically everybody who leaves high school, because for those reasons, right? You in high school, you're probably still playing sports, you're probably still having PE, so you're moving around, you're living at home. And the other side, if you don't go to college, you're probably working, so you're making money. You don't have all this time restriction, so you get to spend more time with your friends. You get to go out. You start drinking,
Oh yeah,
and then
that
all of a
happens.
sudden, and I think this happens to a lot of people, and it's very interesting because a lot of people get shocked by it, and they're like, I don't know how that happened.
No. Well,
You
for
know,
me, it's like I knew it. I knew why it was going on because of like the bad habits of eating, you know, out of high school, and then as I moved along, the drinking started,
yeah,
the partying
yeah,
started, and it was just bad habits.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially in these towns, I think, in smaller towns when there's not a lot to do, you get, I mean, you have friends, right? And some of them are have the bad drinking habits from an earlier stage, and then you get
Yeah.
caught into that world, and all of a sudden here you are. And at that point, obviously, like I think it's an area in our life where we're discovering ourselves, and we want to have fun. We've been locked up in our parents' house for a very long time, and we get this hint of freedom, and sometimes things tend to get out of control
Oh,
for a lot of people.
for me, it did get out of control. I party hard. I would go out Thursday, Friday, Saturday, sometimes Sunday, and it was just drinking throughout the 4 days out of the week, and we would go and fast food and all that stuff. So yeah.
Now, when was this period of time? Was this like right out of high school, and then how long did this last?
That was probably it began like about out of high school. So as I was like 18, I could go clubbing and stuff like that. But it went for a long time. I mean, I was out partying probably till like my late 20s, early 30s.
Okay. How old
So
are you right now?
I'm gonna be 40 next year.
Okay, the big 4
Yeah,
Are you excited?
yeah, yeah.
So you're in now. Okay, so we're talking 20 years,
Hmm.
right? A 20-year shift. We're talking. So you slow down in your early 30s. I'm assuming, but then you obviously the habits don't leave,
Oh
and
no,
those are
they're there.
really really tough. And I say it because I've experienced it myself as well, right? Going to college, going to a D1 place, and it's the amount of partying is just insane, right? And when you do that over years, even though at that point it doesn't seem like it's gonna have that huge of an impact, because I remember a lot of people saying, I think that's like alcoholism, and I'm like, no, we're just having fun, right? But then like we leave college, and then it's like the drinking continues. We always start making more money, and so we have more access to more fun, and it just doesn't go away that easy.
No, it
Alcohol
doesn't.
is really hard to get rid of, and so now we fast forward to mid 30s. What did that start looking for you?
For me, well, I mean, that's mid 30s. It just, it was just a drastic change. I started like, a lot of things were going on, home, parents, um, and it was weird because my 20s were just fun, partying, going to school, but at the same time there was a lot of things going on at home because I was still living with my parents. I had a 10-year relationship with someone that just went the wrong way. Um, and yeah, I mean, it was like during my 30s was like all the craziness was like starting to actually slow down, and I was like looking to see what I was gonna do with myself, and yeah, but that's when I started thinking more of myself and like, okay, what am I gonna do? I was more like the 10-year relationship that I was with ended. The crazy situations that were going around with at home changed. So I was like more looking into stopping the partying and stopping all those bad habits. And yeah, I mean, my 20s, I mean, it was fun.
Yeah.
It was super fun, but at the same time, it was crazy.
Okay.
But in 30, I was like more ready to settle and just find myself.
Right. So let's bring it all the way to the beginning. Where were you born?
I was born in Mexico City.
Okay.
Uh, my parents my mom's from Michoacan, my dad's from Jalisco, and they met in Mexico City,
Interesting.
and that's where I was born. And I was born in Mexico City. I was brought to the States when I was 5. So I've been living I came to Santa Cruz, so I grew up in Santa Cruz all my life technically.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you learned English here in our school system,
Mhm.
and so it wasn't really a problem for you as well, right?
No, it wasn't. I was super young, so I picked it up pretty
Right.
quick. Yeah.
It's very interesting. It seems like you and Laura had a very similar startup, right? She also immigrated from Mexico at a young age. Also grew up in Santa Cruz. And for those of you that don't know, Laura is
Yeah, she's my wife.
your wife, and she's also doing amazing. She's also down like I think 30 something pounds. So both of you are 50 pounds plus down, and it's really amazing to hear both sides of the story, right? Which we'll get into a little bit deeper. So you were born here, and
I was
obviously-
born in Mexico.
You were born in Mexico. Sorry about that. And they brought you here at an early. Do you have siblings?
I have a younger brother. Yeah.
And then was he born?
He was born here. He was
here.
born here.
So there's only two of you.
Just two of us. Yeah.
Okay. And so what was that like as an older brother growing up in a Mexican household, right? Did you feel like you had a lot of responsibilities passed on to you, or what was that like?
Kind of. My parents, they both worked a lot,
Okay.
all the time. They both had 2 jobs. So I would see them in the morning. I would go to school, come back from school, and then I would only see them like after school. I would see them for like an hour, hour and a half, because they would go to the house, eat, and then go back to work. So I wouldn't see them till like next day in the morning. And we had an aunt that used to live with us, so she used to take care of us. She was the one that would like take us to well, not take us to school because I would walk to school, but no, she would take care of my brother. When I would get back, she was the one that would like feed us and just watch us. But my parents were just always working, always working, always working. Yeah.
And once again, sounds, those stories, we hear them a lot. And one of the reasons, obviously, we started this, now it's becoming a podcast, or these interviews, is because we wanted to show people how similar we all have, our growing ups are, right? Because I think a lot of times we're all suffering and we don't realize that, hey, the person next to me probably has a very similar past than I do, and we can connect, or we can relate a lot more than I think we can. And so your parents are always working, and so you're raised by your aunt, basically, right?
Well,
Uh,
yeah. I mean, my
like on
parents
a Monday through Friday?
on a
Is
Monday
that
through Friday, my aunt was the one that was there. I would see my parents on their days off, and we did enjoy those days when
right?
they were off because it
Right.
was like dedicated to us.
You're right.
But throughout the week, they were always working,
Yeah.
and then I remember that as I started growing up and I was getting a little older, um, I was always just dragging my brother with me. Like wherever I went, he was with me. If I had to go to soccer practice, he was with me. If I went outside to play with my friends, he was always with
Mm.
me. So um, he got used to just being always with me and being around way older people because
Mm.
we're 7 years apart.
Okay.
So technically, all my friends were his friends, but he was like the baby one in the
Mm.
group. And yeah, he was always with me.
Now, do you feel like how did you do in academics at a younger age? Were you an A student? Were you B student? C student? Did you struggle with school
I,
because your parents weren't there? Did your parents implement, like, were they strict on you finishing your work, or were they just so busy that it was like get it
they
done?
were just so busy, that they really didn't have time to like check on my homeworks. They really didn't have the time to like work with me in a project. But they would tell me like, hey, you better do your homework. Yeah, you better do good. But in reality, they didn't have the time to like double check to see if
Right.
I was actually doing good or not.
Right.
I was not an A or B student. I was an average student. I did pass my classes. I tried but I wasn't like I felt like, yeah, they told me to do good, but it wasn't really enforced because they
Right.
weren't around.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big one. And for those that are listening right now, I think that's a big takeaway, right? Sometimes we get so caught up on work, and it's understandable when you're trying to survive. And it sounds like it's if your both parents are working multiple jobs, and obviously immigrants coming from Mexico, it's survival. It's
Hmm.
not because you know you get the workaholic side of it, but it sounds like it was jobs. It wasn't like entrepreneurship or something like that.
No,
It
it
was
was,
like
yeah.
making ends meet and trying to survive in this country. And then you kind of get this effect from it, right? Because you're lacking all that time with your parents, and obviously the weekend is it has to be enjoyed
Yeah,
because
we enjoyed it.
right.
Yeah.
And I had a similar story to that. Both my parents, my mom didn't really work. She took care of us, but my dad was always working. And I know he would work. He's worked in agriculture his whole life,
Hmm.
and he did it. He applied all the pesticides. So strawberry season, like around this
Mm.
time of season, he's working till like 9, sometimes 11 o'clock at night, right? Because they got to apply the pesticides after the strawberries are picked. So I remember that happening to me as well, where my father wasn't there for me for quite a while, but the weekends he was always there. They always made sure that he was always there. On my side of the story, for me, school was like if I don't do well in school, I don't play. So for me, it was
Mm.
like they had that against me. They had some
Okay.
leverage on me, and I was able to take care of my schooling because how much soccer mattered to me at that point. But it's so interesting to hear, how these households, how we're raised, and obviously I believe it has some type of effect, as we grow up because we were having this conversation the other day with you. You sent me a voice message, right? And we were talking about how you couldn't believe how you were able to do certain things, right? And you were still in your head a little bit about doubting yourself if it was doable or not. And I remember telling you like it really comes down to when how we're raised, right? It's something that happened with you as a child, and for some kids it's negative talk, right? Parents always coming down on the kid and saying like, no, this is not the way to do it, or it's fear talk like you're gonna fall, don't try this,
Hmm.
why would you do that? And then I think there's another one which seems like lack of encouragement or absence, right? Just not enough conversation to push a kid to do more and do more. And it's very interesting to hear like what side you get. And when you take a step back and you just kind of think about it and be like, all right, why do I have this fear of failing? Why do I think that it might not work? You know what I mean? Like, and just go back in time and think, did your parents try different things, or were they in a state of fear, right? Because I hear this a lot with the Mexican culture, and I don't know if it's everywhere else, but you know, everybody, we hear it all the time. Me van a robar. Todos te van a robar, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
everybody's against you type of deal. Like they're always protecting themselves, and I'm not gonna do that because that's a scam. Everything's a
Mm-hmm.
scam to everybody, and so they live in this like bubble of fear that everybody's against them. Is that something that happened in your household as well,
Mm,
or?
no, not really. I mean, it was my. I think it was kind of weird because they weren't around as much. But when they were around, like we enjoyed it. Like they made sure they took care of us. Like they would take us out. They would always go to my soccer games. They would cheer me on. But it was just, I guess, the impact of them not being during the week.
Yeah.
Like it had an effect.
Right.
But knowing that they weren't there during the week, like I said, with my homework and all that, like I know I could just, do technically whatever I wanted.
Yeah.
And but my dad was the type of person that he wasn't really like you- like he couldn't really had a good skills to communicate with me. But when he did, he was hard. He hardly ever like yelled at me. He hardly ever like was he wasn't really like that hard dad.
Mm.
But when he had to, he had to. It was always more of my mom. Like my mom was the one that was like on my case of like if I ever did anything wrong, she was like on my case or like yelling at me and telling me this, telling me that. But it got to a point where I got used to it,
Mm.
you know. And sometimes I was just like, okay, mom. But when my dad stepped in, I knew it was like, oh shit, like,
Yeah.
yeah.
There was some
There was
consequences.
consequences, but it was rare. It
Yeah.
was rare for him to like actually be like, hey, like you better get your stuff together.
So do you feel like, even though, right? Because I go back and same thing. I think of all those. Now you're making me go back in history
Mm-hmm.
and think of like all these moments where our parents were really difficult on us and really hard on us, and we got the belt. It was like there was
Oh
no
yeah.
there was no communication. It
Well,
was just
no.
like you mess up and you got the belt,
Well,
and it was often. It was
yeah.
for me. It was very often. But looking back, like it's their way of showing discipline, right, and respect. Obviously, they learned it from their parents,
Oh
and
yeah.
unfortunately, that was the way their parents were taught, and so on, right? And obviously, we get to break the cycle. But do you wish your dad maybe was a little bit more strict, more consistently, or?
I I wish he would have like had better communication, especially like after junior high when I started going to high school, because I feel that that's when I was like doing things I weren't supposed to. And he I guess we were really close before that, and I feel like during high school we were like it was not the same.
Mm,
But I feel he just didn't know how to like approach me or come to
right.
me. And when he tried, I feel it was like already a little too late because I wasn't taking it no
Yeah.
more. But and then when my mom was just always on my case and just always like telling me stuff because she's like a really hard
Mm,
woman. And but I did feel like when there was those times that I had a conversation with my dad, they were way better than having a conversation with my mom,
mm,
because I feel that my mom's always been hard, like a hard woman, and like she's the type of person that sometimes, which I like, I don't, I hated it. You know, sometimes if she messed, like if she would mess up in something, she wasn't the type of person that she would say sorry. It was like,
Mm.
well, too bad, whatever, it happened, you know.
Mm.
And I was like, yeah, it doesn't work that way,
Yeah.
you know. Like, you like gotta feel like, I feel like this time you messed up. Like I should hear an apology.
Right.
There was no apology. But with my dad, it was different. You know, when he actually did approach me, he would talk to me. If he felt, you know, he was too harsh or he like messed up, he would actually be like, you know what, like I'm sorry, but I'm doing this for this reason
Right.
and that reason.
Right.
And conversations with him were a little better, but like it was hardly there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So obviously the explanation after mattered more than always just coming at you.
exactly.
Because eventually it just kind of becomes white noise, right? You kind of learn how to deviate all of
Yeah.
that. Now, so you're a father now, right? Is
Hmm.
that something that you try to work on as a father? Like some of those areas that maybe your parents didn't have communication, you know, explaining to them why you're being hard on them and why you're implementing discipline on them. Is that something that you try to practice now as a father?
Oh, definitely. I try to change it because I mean, I don't want, you know, my kids to experience, you know, what I went through because it was hard, you know.
Right.
Having moments where like, you know, I wish I had a better relationship with them. Not that it was like a really bad one,
Right.
but you know, just communicating with them and telling them like what I was going through. It wasn't easy,
Mm.
you know. But no, definitely. Like I talk to the girls and I tell them like why I'm doing certain things or why they're getting punished or why, you know, like I let them know and I let them know like I care about you. This is why I'm doing it, and like this is the consequence for whatever it is they did. And you know, like with my boy, you know, he's little, he's 7, but it's the same thing. You know, I tell him like, you know, you can't do this for this reason. This is the consequence, and this is why you're not doing it. You know, but yeah, I try to communicate with them, and especially like I try to be more like lovable and effective with them compared to like my
Mm.
parents because they weren't. I would only get a hug and a kiss like a birthday or Christmas.
Yeah.
You know, they weren't affectionate, and like my boy, you know, my boy is like he loves to hug, he loves to kiss. He just
Yeah.
randomly like will run up to you and hug you, and I enjoy that. And like you know, we're always kissing, we're always hugging. So yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
try to you know I
Mm-hmm.
like I look back and I'm like I wish that you
Yeah.
know that could have happened to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I try to change it.
It's such an interesting feeling as a first time father, I think, right? Because you have two girls, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and those are from
Loudest.
Laura,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so this is your first boy, right? Your
Yeah.
your first kid, realistically.
Mm-hmm.
And so because I experienced this myself too. Now that you talk about the hugging situation, same thing. My parents, there wasn't a lot of like hugging, and it's almost like awkward still. Like
Oh
to this
yeah.
day, like I was having, like I try to do more of the love
Mm-hmm.
because I'm conscious of it now, and that's something that I've kind of worked on the last 2 years of overcoming. I tend to have this. I don't know if it was anger or I was confused about what situation me and my dad were in. um, but now I try to like come in and like bring it in for a hug, but it's still like a side hug. And I've
Mm-hmm.
noticed that I do it with a lot of people,
Okay.
and so I'm kind of awkward in that affectionate side. But I remember the first time or the first few experiences with my son. Once now he's able to comprehend and hug you out of,
Mm-hmm.
because at first you're holding the baby, but it was such the emotion inside. It was so interesting, right? And it was one of the best experiences to experience the first hug out of your son. But it's amazing to get that type of love, and now I try to once again implement it as well. But it's challenging too for me. I find it challenging sometimes, right? Because a lot of times when he's being a little shit,
Mhm.
you know, like I notice qualities of my dad or ways that he was, and he was just very hard, and I try to just sustain myself, and
Yeah.
it's like, you know, it's interesting because if you're aware of it, you can visually see yourself about to snap, and then you're like, hold back, and so it's very interesting how that happens and how we kind of resemble our parents and how we are. But if we're aware, we can shift that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And once again, like you said, just continuing to give more hugs as a dad and more kisses and stuff like that. For me, I felt like that was a sign of weakness, and because I was growing up in a very macho, like tough
Mhm.
guy,
Mhm.
and you know, like, and I've talked about it in a couple of the episodes too. Love is one of those words that for me it just doesn't come out natural. It just feels really
You
awkward.
have
It's
the
like, I love
awkwardness.
you, and I'm like,
I
yeah, I love
might.
you. I love you too.
No,
Yeah.
well, for me, it's funny because now that you're mentioning it, that you try to do it with your dad, and uh, I about like a year and a half, about like a year, I started doing it with my dad, and I started doing it with my mom, and I can still up to this day, like I don't do it every time I see them,
Yeah.
I just do it randomly, Like I'll hug him and I'll kiss him, and I can tell like right away where he's like, both of them, they're like, what the fuck's going on, like, and it's awkward to them, and at first it was awkward just for me to even
Yeah.
try to do it, but now I just randomly just, like, if I feel it, I just do it, like I'm like whatever, and I just do it, and I can tell both of them, they're like, what,
Yeah.
like at first, I remember my mom, when like one of the first times I did it, she's like, "Algo quieres," and I was
It's always
laughing.
that.
Yeah, I was laughing. That I told her, I was like, "I can't just give you a hug," and then she's like, "Ha ha," and I left, and I thought it was funny because like I can tell it was super awkward for her, and now I just randomly do it, and it's funny because when I go to my to their house and I take my boy, like I always make sure that he doesn't leave without hugging them or kissing them.
Mm.
And I see the difference. I see the difference because they'll just take it and they'll
Mm.
enjoy it
Mm-hmm.
coming out of him, and when it when it's coming out of me, like I can tell, it's like an awkwardness,
Yeah.
and I just think it's funny.
I was thinking about that the other day, and you know what I think it is? Obviously, the amount of responsibility that your parents had to take on coming into this place, right? When I think of immigrants and they make the move, right? There's like this weight on their shoulders as to like, okay, I've jumped the border, right? I've
Mm-hmm.
gone over, which is something that a lot of people there want to do, and it almost feels like they have all this pressure that they need to get it right, right? And so they come into a country. At least this is how I feel. My parents, how it went for my dad, right? My dad lost his mom at a very young age as a kid, and so he always immediately went to work. So he always had that responsibility, right? And obviously, we know deep inside every parent wants the best for their kids. But I think they come in here once again with a little bit of fear, and that fear, what ends up happening, turns into like a dictatorship, right? And so we're responsible for this child, and I need to make sure that this child excels in life. And so I'm gonna work as hard as I can. I'm gonna be as hard as I can on them, and then they forget like the affection side,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which I think matters the most. It seems like because they tend to get away, and then they end up, I feel like a lot of parents here, they end up becoming servants. They feel like they're a servant over time, and I don't think a lot of people take a moment to kind of think about of why they're feeling a certain way or why they're acting a certain way. um, but it sounds like that's what it's like, because whenever I hear sometimes my mom talk, and it's like, well, I've been taking care of my kids since I was 15, 16, and I've always been a mom, and I've always served my kids, right? It sounds like that's the one thing. And so they end up leaving themselves behind.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then there's this like there's this hole inside of them that they can't fill because they're not fulfilled, right? They're doing something that they knew they had to, and they obviously wanted the best. They wanted to come to America for a better life, for a better life for their kids. But in that process, I feel like they lost fulfillment, and it comes out in their behavior, and they don't realize it. And now it's our turn to go back and kind of analyze that data because we can make the same mistake as well, right? And I hear it a lot with first time kids who go to college. Like I was having this conversation with another girl. Oh, the girl that was has a 3D printing, which is like amazing, right? Works at Google, all this type of stuff. And she felt like she wasn't doing enough.
Hmm.
And it's very interesting how all of a sudden that gets passed on, and you have to catch that behavior, because if you don't feel like you're doing enough, well then all of a sudden you're not going to become fulfilled, and all of a sudden that cycle
It just continues.
continues again in a different world, in a different era, right? It might not be the same way that we experienced it with our parents, but if you never feel like you're doing enough, and if you're never fulfilled, then some part of us is gonna come off in the wrong way, and our kids are going to take that.
Yeah.
And if they don't catch it,
Yeah.
it continues, right?
Yeah.
So it's taking a moment to just look back and analyze and understand. I think that's been the biggest part for me, is understanding instead of judging, instead of being like, they should have done it this way, they should have done it that way. And it's like, well, let's go back in history. And once again, the reason why we're talking about this is now we can compare stories and go back and be like, I never really thought about it that way. That makes a lot of sense.
I feel that came to me once I became a dad. Like I think I started understanding them way more when I became a dad. When I took on the responsibility of my two stepdaughters, and I started noticing like this is parenting. Like I remember I started thinking like, well, why my mom was like this. Oh, well, she went through this, she went through that. Like, okay, I kind of get it. You know, my dad also. My dad in reality never met his mom. My dad was only like three. I think he said he was 3 years old when his mom passed away. When my grandma passed away, and he told me his story. He had it hard because my grandma passes away, and he's used to sleeping with my grandpa. They slept in the same bed because he was the baby out of, I think, like 10 kids. He was the baby, and he's 3, and when he turns 6, just randomly my grandpa shows up with this new lady, and the lady had a baby already, so he gets kicked out from the room, the bed, and now he has to go sleep with the older sisters. And he tells me, he's like, imagine me being 6 years old, not really understanding what was going on, and my dad shows up with this kid that's not his, but now I see this kid and his new wife sleeping in bed with him, like,
he gets priority.
Yeah, he's like, imagine how I felt, and I'm like, wow, And then after that, he said he like really never had a good relationship with his dad, and he left. He lived in this little rancho in Jalisco, and he had older sisters already living in Mexico City. So he took off when he was like 13, 12 to Mexico City. And he said, he tells me every time he would go back to visit, my grandpa was always trying to convince him to stay, but he was like, no, I'm leaving. Like, but for him, it was like, I guess that just always stayed in his head. He never had that relationship. So when I go back and think about it, like I'm like, okay, maybe that's the reason he couldn't really like approach me, and he really didn't know how to like talk to me, because
he didn't
have that with my grandpa. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's It's like I said, it goes back to your childhood. It goes back to how you were raised, and then it probably goes back to your father, how he
Mm-hmm.
was raised, and it probably goes back to his father, and it's just like this series of things, and we get so caught up in life that we don't get to really think about it. And that's one thing that I hope, because I've experienced this in the last 2 years of my life. I've met I got a mentor, to help me with my business, because even though I was starting this business and it was really exciting, I started going in a moment in my life where it was a little bit too overwhelming for me to handle myself, and I was like I was getting the success that everybody else around me could see, but something wasn't right, and I think I just had a lot of emotional stuff inside of me that I was never able to really get out. And talking to this man has really helped me kind of digest all that stuff out, and it's made a huge improvement. I remember it's like I always tell it now. I tell it more often, but um, it was like 2 years of just bawling my eyes out. And once you start digging deep into these emotions, it's really interesting as a man, because the one thing that for me was the most difficult is crying, because I didn't see it in my household either.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I didn't see my dad cry. I've seen my dad cry probably twice, and so that was the next question that I was gonna have for
Mm-hmm.
you. Um, so it's you know one of the things that I couldn't really stand was crying, and because I saw it in my dad, and so my mom was very emotional. And so for me, it goes back to like when you were saying that it was really hard for you to listen to your mom yelling at you. It was really hard for me to listen to my mom always cry.
Mm-hmm.
And so um, it was just now that I had these conversations, I realized I'm a lot more emotional than how hard I thought it was. And
And
it's so interesting, right? Because the macho community that we're surrounded by, um, which brings me back to the question: how many times have you seen your dad cry?
I think I've seen my dad cry probably 4 or 5 times, and the times I've seen him cry is because one of his siblings passed or someone passed. Other than that, uh, I don't think I have. He is emotional. Like I can tell, because when he cries, he cries and
Mm.
he shows his feelings.
Mm.
You know, but I think it's funny because my mom's more of like the hard one. Like
Mm.
she brings out like this hard lady within her. But I think I've seen her cry way more times. And it's funny because I've talked to my dad because I work with my dad. He works with me, so I see him every day, and we've talked at work. And I told my dad once, I'm like, my mom's not as hard as she
Mm.
brings it out.
It's the front.
And then he's like, yeah, he's like, I know. And you know and they're way different. Like my mom and my dad are just like it's funny how they're like the opposite.
Mm.
And but he tells me, he's like, yeah, your mom's not as hard as she makes herself, or as she brings it out. But him, he's more of the jokester. He's more of like the outgoing guy and stuff. But I haven't, like, the only times I've seen him cry is because someone passed.
Yeah. So, do you feel like because he was able to get a lot of his emotions out, he's a little bit more comfortable? And maybe your mom, what is the story behind your mom's childhood? Is
Oh,
that something that she doesn't really talk about?
she talks about it. She grew up in a family of 10. Um, they were supposed to be 16, but six of them passed. As little kids, I think she mentioned my grandma lost twins, and they were like a year old or 2 years old, and but she had, it's five and five. So it's a family of 10, and she mentions how like they were super poor, you know. my grandpa, was always like a farm worker with and his cows and this, and she was telling me that, for example, for Reyes, because they don't celebrate Christmas, they celebrate
Mm.
Reyes Magos. She's like, all we would get was like a little bag with like fruit and peanuts, and that was it. Like we didn't know what toys were, we didn't know what stuff like that. So that's why she left from Mexico City to work when she was like, I think she said she was like 13, and that's all she knew. Like she knew she had to work in order for her to have something or whatever she wanted because they were so poor. And she's saying that, she grew up in this household, and she would ask herself like, why are my parents like having more kids if like they're struggling? They can't they can't really take care of all of us because we're this poor. And like, so I guess that's why she always was like, I'm having a small family because I'm gonna provide what I can, and I'm gonna give them what I can, and
Yeah, that's tough, man. Once again, we through storytelling, we start realizing like, man, my life is good.
yeah,
Like,
it is. It is. I mean, it is good.
And I think that's the beauty about storytelling is that then you start realizing like, oh man, like people have some tough times, and obviously tough times make strong people too, right? So yeah, we do want to suffer a little bit because we do want to get stronger, and it's something to think about for your kids too, because if we make life too easy for them,
Oh,
we're gonna make them weak.
oh yeah.
So you have to throw a little curveball at them here and there.
It's funny
like that.
because I grew up like obviously seeing my parents and how hard they were and stuff, and it's funny because now like I like I always tell Laura this, because Mateo has like a whole
Spoiled.
bunch of Legos and toys, and you know and I tell Laura, just joking around, I'm like, I always asked for Legos when I was a kid, and I never had Legos.
Yeah.
I'm like, and look at this kid. There's Legos all over the living room. I'm like, they're spoiled. Like honestly, they're spoiled. But it feels good because we're like, okay, they're spoiled, and we can provide this for them, and it's something that we didn't have, and obviously my parents never had. But at the same time, I'm like, well, like, do I really want to give them everything? Because they need to learn that they need to do something of their own. Like we can't just be giving them everything all the time.
Right.
But it's hard as a parent because you want to give everything.
No, I feel the same way, and I think once again, like for grandparents, right? It's like for us, it's we want to do better, right? Than our parents did, and we want to give them more than what we have. And sometimes it's important to remind your parents, like the grandparents, that hey, like your sacrifice that you did back then now allows this kid to have this, right? And I think I need to do a better job of it now that I talk about it, because I feel like sometimes our parents, they work so hard and they feel like they never got appreciated, but now that their grandkid has the ability to have all these Legos, like that's some of your work too, right? You developed this son that was able to now provide more for this, and so like that is an effect that you've done. And for all the grandparents out there, you guys are doing an amazing job. No. And as a culture, like that's what it's all about. Like we're growing, we're making moves, right? And when you talk about that, one thing that we never talked about in my household, and now I'm gonna bring this up, and I don't know if you do it in yours, but we started implementing it into our company once again because of this mentor. He brought in values into our employees, and values is something that I've never really heard about in the past, and I didn't really know what they meant or what the whole point was. But when you create values in a workplace, it's very easy to control behavior of employees, right? Because if one of the values, for example, is leadership, then everything goes back to leadership, right? If you're doing something that is not in a leadership way, you're being, selfish or whatever it is, we go back to those values and say, hey, it's very easy to correct behavior because now it's not me coming down on this kid and being like, you know what, you suck, all this type of stuff. It's, hey, these are the values that we follow as a company that we all agreed on, and we all worked on them together. And this is what we said we were going to do, and this is what we said we were going to stand for, which is, being family, having honor, being leaders, having discipline, right? And so everything, our behavior needs to go back to that, and that's how we correct ourselves. Do you have a set of values in your family? And I say this because I went back and I'm like, wait, I don't have any. I didn't get taught any values as a kid, right? The belt was the corrector, and in my family, that's something that I do want to implement as my son starts to grow up. And now as we start the youth programs, which now I have kids of other parents, it's something that we're working on implementing on those kids because I think it's something very important. Is that something that you and Laura have in your household? Do you have a set of values that you follow, or is that something that you ever thought about?
To be honest, it's not something that we really thought about, or I mean, at least me, yeah, I mean, now that you bring it up, it's not that we don't have values, but it's not something that we really implement. I feel that we, as parents, we try to show them examples. So we're like, if they're doing something wrong, we're like, well, that's not what we're showing you. That's not the example we give you. And you know what's right and wrong, and we've taught you what's right and wrong. So, but yeah,
and I think it's a lot of the times is we just assume, right? We assume that they're supposed to know, or we assume that we taught it the right way. And I think that's what happened a lot with our parents, is they just assume that we understood. And a lot of the times, I think if you take a moment to ask, like, do you understand what this really means, or give definitions and sit down and have that family talk where we say, hey, like, these are the values. And I see this a lot with high-level entrepreneurs, and I've seen that some of them have implemented in their families, and they talk about how, everything goes back to that, and they're visible. They're somewhere in the house. They're always visible, and the conversations with their kids go a lot better because it's no longer like, once again, you're not scolding your kids anymore. You're not the dad that's always yelling at them, but there's house rules. Like, this is how we operate our family. This is how we operate as humans. And we always go back to that, right? We go back to these 5 values, and whether that's family, right? So you got to show affection to everybody in your family, whether it's having discipline. So that means that we're going to wake up every day, and we're going to shower, and we're going to do the things that we're supposed to do. And I'm really excited for my family because that's something, like I said, that as Luca continues to grow up, I want to implement and work on that because I want to see what that effect has. I have a friend that works in San Diego, and she works for a company called Soccer Shots, and I know that they implement a lot of values into their soccer program. So that's something that I listen to and I think about because they're implementing it on toddlers. And so maybe something for everybody to look into and think about if you're listening to this, and just ask yourself, have I set a set of values for my kids? Have I had the conversation? Because a lot of times I think we believe that they don't understand. And I've been having this conversation with Andrea too. Luca understands what we're talking about. He's about to be 3, but that kid understands. And when you sit him down and you have a conversation with him, he knows exactly what you're saying. And so, something to take away that I think, you can go ahead and and implement in your family if both of you are willing to. That's something that we're working on the back end too for Envision. I think you guys saw the shirts we brought out, and we just kind of wanted to put them out there, see what effect we had on people, but we haven't really had the time to explain them. And so that's something that we're hoping to. So here's another introduction to values. Cool. Sprinkle them in. But yeah, I think it's important because if we listen back to those stories, right, of our parents and how they did it, the way I see things now is I don't want to tell my kid what to do. I want to be an example, right? And we had this conversation about you not knowing if you're going to be able to do it. And so I'm going to challenge you and have you think about, what example can I be for my kids, right? Like, I'm going to take chances. I'm going to take risks because I want my kids to take risks. I want my kids to fail. I want my kids to be okay. And I want my kids to fail at a very young age because I want them to become okay with it and know what that feeling is like and know what it takes to come out of there. So my challenge to you is, to sit down and just identify all those feelings and just say, you know what, like I am capable of doing all of these things that maybe I had in mind that I've been putting away. Because, Andrea and I always talk about it, like, how can I tell my kid to work hard if I haven't worked hard? How can I tell my kid to dream big if I haven't dreamed big?
No,
right?
It's true. It's true.
And seeing both of you and Laura now in the summer challenge, or just you in the summer challenge, and just seeing the transformation that Laura has had. And once again, I talk about both of you, even though we're seeing the success right now, this success happened when you guys walked in because both of you decided that you were going to change, right? And obviously, once again, we talk about change doesn't just happen right away. It happens with time. This change has been happening. And so you're in a point where it's like, come on, throw more at me. What else are we going to do?
Yeah, I mean, it's been amazing since we walked through that door, because I have seen the effect that it's had in the kids, and Laura and I have talked about it, like, like we want the kids to start going to the gym, and we want them to do more activities and go out and not just be inside the house with the phones or the tablets. And I think that slowly for the kids, like they've been catching it, like they've been noticing. The oldest one just randomly sometimes just goes to the gym, and then sometimes she just eats healthy, and like we didn't like. Well, personally, I don't tell her anything, but I've noticed it, and it's a nice feeling. Like I'm like, okay, well, she might not do good some days, and we let it go. We're like, okay, because we don't want to like push it hard into her, but just sometimes she's just be like, oh, I'm gonna go to the gym after work, or oh, I'm gonna do this, or she starts eating a little bit healthier. Yeah, she has her. Everybody has their bad days, and but she like we can tell, like, okay, she's doing it. She's seeing it, and it's coming from us, and it's amazing because we're like, okay, well, we're doing something right. Like they're noticing it. Mateo did his first Spartan race.
Yeah, I think that's so amazing to see the little ones out there.
And he also did the Mother's Day run with us, but Mateo, for some reason, he's like, oh no, I can't do this, or no, I'm not gonna be able to do this. And when we took him to the Spartan race, we're like, no, you're doing it, you're gonna go with it, you're gonna go along with it, and he started the race, and Laura and I were just with him the whole race, and I remember him picking up the sandbag. And he had his sandbag. He's like running with the sandbag. He drops it. He looks at me, and I'm like, "No, pick it up. Like, you got it." And then I'm like, "Drag it if you have to, but you have to do it." and he did it. He got his medal. He was just super happy. And I told him, I'm like, see, you can do it. You did it. I'm like, how does it feel? He's like, hey, it was super fun. I'm like, you just got to push yourself. You got to do it. He's like, yeah. So, like, I know that, yeah, they're watching. Yeah, they know what we're doing. And, we're just trying to set an example for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it's a parallel behavior that is happening, right? And with a younger kid, you're probably going to see it become more natural, just because. And I always say this to a lot of people that have the little ones: is kids don't really know anything but what they see in front of them, right? So if a kid is raised in the hood, that's all he knows.
Yeah.
Right? If a kid is raised in a family of very fit people who, don't eat chips, don't eat processed food, and just eat whole foods, well, that's all he knows, right? A lot of people always ask us, like, how does he eat so much fruit and how does he eat so much chicken? Like, our kid wakes up and asks for ground turkey or in Greek yogurt and first thing in the morning at 5 a.m, right? Like, what kid asks for that? But we're very high. We eat a lot of protein on a daily basis, and since he was a baby, we've always fed him whole foods, and so that's all he knows. For your older kids, I think, once again, it's not that there's bad food or it's not that they're having bad days. They're correcting their behavior just like you guys are, right? Just like both of you are. And yeah, obviously once again, we talk about the habits that we've developed. They're always there, and we just need to become aware of them. How often are we doing them, or how often do we allow them to come in? And they're just correcting it as well, because they're seeing the effect that it's having on both of you. And that's just the environment. We adapt to the environments that we are in, right? So if your environment in your household has all of a sudden changed, and dad and mom are always now hiking, and dad and mom are always cooking good foods and eating whole foods, the kids will eventually adapt to that environment. Because if you think about it, we're tribes, right? We are meant to be with each other. And people don't like to be isolated, which is one of the reasons why change is so difficult. When you leave your tribe, right, you get singled out. So think about the times that you've tried to make change and everybody's like, come on, have another shot. Why are you being like that?
Yeah.
Right? And because that tribe feels betrayed in some sort of way. They don't want to lose a member of their tribe, right? And so I always tell people it's the bandwagon effect. One of them has to make the decision to leave the tribe and say there's better. And then that person needs to pull another person in. And what tends to happen when you get two? All of a sudden you get three. And what happens to that other tribe? It starts getting smaller. And all of a sudden people are so afraid to be alone that they start coming to the other tribe, and they start shifting, right? And that's one of the things that I see a lot here, and I always tell people, because people have a really difficult time making the changes because they get bullied or they get picked on or they make fun of. And I tell them, you have to be strong and you have to make the change, because you are going to be the one that gets everybody out of that hole. And when I talk about building leaders, that's exactly what it means. It means every single person that goes into that room is creating the change, whether it's in their family, whether it's in their circle of friends. And it's your responsibility to go follow through with it, because of the change that you make, more people are going to change. And that is how we make a huge change in our community.
No, and people notice. I get asked, especially after the challenge, I got asked a lot of times.
The
like
secret
friends,
sauce.
yeah, like friends just randomly started like messaging me like through Instagram, and random people that they were just people I knew, and they're asking me like, "Hey, what you do? Hey, and like there's this friend. He's like, "Hey, I saw your post. Good job, and someone that I never expected would reach out and ask, it felt nice. And he's like, "What did you do?" I'm like, "I just changed my diet."
Yeah.
And I go to the gym and I change my diet. And he's like, "Well, what do you eat? What do you?" And I'm like, "You know what?" I'm like, "Give me a minute, dude. I'll send you what I
Yeah.
eat." You know.
Hmm.
And then, I send it to him, and he's like, "Oh, thanks. Appreciate it." But I told him, I'm like, "I'm gonna hit you up in 2 weeks,
Mm.
and I want to know, how it's been." And he's like, "Oh yeah, yeah, for sure." 2 weeks went by. I didn't get an answer or anything, but I was like, well, I threw it out there.
Yeah.
He asked for a reason. Maybe, maybe he didn't catch right now, but
Yeah.
eventually, hopefully, he
Yeah.
will.
Well, you became interested, right? And
Yeah.
I think that's a good takeaway to think about is you're starting to inspire people. At least you're making people think,
Yeah.
right? Like, I could change too. And like I said, I think a lot of people here want to change. I mean, obesity is, it's big. It's what, 40 something percent. Um, I might be way higher than that actually. But your story is starting to inspire people, and your actions are starting to inspire others. And once again, I told Lauda the same thing. You're a leader, whether you believe it or not. You need to have that mind shift that you are a leader. And all of a sudden, what happens when you become a leader is now you have all these people on your shoulders. And so you have this responsibility to follow through because everybody's all eyes on you, right? And we can use that as a way to help us keep going, right? Because now what happens out of that, and what happened to me, and because I discovered this by coaching people, is I got fulfillment out of it, right? I was supposed to leave like when I first came back from New York in August. I have a trip booked to Bali, and I was supposed to leave. I was like, I'm out of here. I'm only stopping here for 3 months to make some money, and then I'm out. I was lost. I was like, I'm not a coach. And I remember coaching group, and all these people gave me all this affection, and just seeing their smiles when they were dropping weight. And you see the impact that your actions or your knowledge can have on people, and that's where fulfillment comes. And it's something that it's really hard to understand until you experience it, right? Because people are telling you, thank you, you're the best, you don't know how much you've changed my life. And I'm like, all I gave you was some macros. Like, it was pretty straightforward,
Yeah.
right? But we don't know how deep people are in this hole. And sometimes people are just asking for a rescue. And I always this is one of the reasons why I love to tell stories, and I always go back to the past, because that's how we relate to others. And sometimes we say something and we don't realize it, and that's what that person needed, right? A word of encouragement, hey, you did an amazing job today, because we don't know what's happening at home. The whole world could be falling apart at home, and a simple comment like, hey, you did an amazing job today, like,
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
It's a big thing.
It's a huge thing, right? Like, this person could be going through a divorce. This person could be getting physically abused at home. This person could have just lost her parents and didn't really have anybody to talk to. And so that is one of the reasons why we try to create the environment that we create at Envision. And once again, nobody really knows what happens until they come inside.
True.
Right? You have to be a part of it, because it's the positive reinforcement. It's all the positive comments. It's all the care that we give each other, that is helping us move forward. We're all moving forward as a gym. I see the 5 a.m. class, how close all of you have become.
Oh yeah.
And you guys have a big group of friends, and I mean, you probably know their stories more than I do, because you spend more time with them, and they're all suffering. They're all going through some difficult times, right?
We've talked, and some of them are going through hard times, but they're here. They're here. They're pushing themselves, and they're trying to do the best they can. which is cool. I mean, our our little group, like you say, it's amazing because when I was doing the challenge, and I told you I don't know why, but like I doubt myself sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
and they were like, "Oh no, you got it. Oh no, you're taking it. Oh no, you can do this." And I was just getting messages because we have a little group chat in
Mm-hmm.
Instagram, and they were telling me like, "Cesar, you're taking it. You're taking it." And like in my head, I was like, "Nah." I'm like, "There's other people doing it too. Like I don't know what they're doing. I don't know
Yeah.
how much they lost. And but all of them were like, "Nah, you got this. You got this." And it really didn't hit until I was there for the challenge final, and I was like, okay. And then when you started talking, and then when you mentioned the dancing, I was like, oh shit, I took it. And it was an amazing feeling. But I'm also grateful for all of them because as they were messaging me and telling me that I could do it. It was also you know building up within me to know that it was possible.
Yeah.
Because Laura, she's amazing. And like she was always telling me like, you got this, come on, like you got this. And she was always pushing me. And but coming from other people, not just her, was just like, it was a big impact. I was like,
Right.
wait, what? Like
Mm-hmm.
like other people are actually noticing what I'm doing, and they're actually like they want me
To
to
win.
to win.
Yeah. How's that feeling, man? Because once again, competitions are very interesting, right? Because we obviously want people to win, but we don't want them to do as good as we do,
Hmm.
which is a very weird thing that I see a lot. And it's just, I think it's part of human nature. Um, but what was that accomplishment? What was it? Oh, well, there, I give it up. What was that feel of accomplishment that you had when you finally just like, you're like, oh my God, I actually won? How did that feel? And then what did it feel like to know that, it was a team effort as well? Like having so many people behind you that actually wanted you to win, right? Because we don't see that very often.
No, it was amazing. I mean, when I was sitting down and you started talking, and then I was like, wait, shit, he's talking about me. Like I really I'm not the type of guy that really shows emotion. Um, and I was like, oh shit, like I wanted to tear up, but like I wanted to cry. I was like, oh shit. And and knowing that, yeah, Laura was just helping me like incredible with the diet, and she was pushing me. But at the same time, like all my gym buddies were like, you got this, you can do it. It was just, I'm like, wow, like really, like they're cheering for me. It was nice. It was a great feeling,
Yeah.
and even Jake, he I Laura, I guess, told him, like, oh, Caesar took it. He was in Colombia. He was
Yeah.
enjoying himself. He took time out of his trip, and he messaged me. He's like, dude, congratulations. I just found out. And I'm like, wow, like cool, like it's never really happened to me where so many people at once are cheering for me, or like noticing what I'm doing, I guess. Even last night, you know one of the one of the one of the one of the members that was also in the challenge, forget his name, like I only met him like 2 or 3 times, and we got partnered together. um Last night, he sent me a message, and he was like, hey, you killed it, congratulations. And it was just so random, and it was someone that I've never expected would hit
Yeah.
me up. And I was just like, wow. I haven't had the time to reply to
Yeah.
him, but it was just because it
Yeah.
was late, and I was just like, oh, this is cool. Like it's
Yeah.
it's a great feeling.
It's such an amazing feeling to feel appreciated and to see your hard work, right? That is actually being watched by the people, and for people to be happy for you. And once again, probably a friendly reminder to everybody. it's like take a time to be happy for other people's successes, right? Because we're all here to get better at the end of the day. Like we're all in this world. We all want the best for our kids. We all want the best for ourselves. And if we take a moment to think about it, like we should be encouraging each other to grow because that's what really helps us grow. It gives us confidence. It's important to know that I have a team supporting me, right? Like I mean, look at sports. Look how many people cheer on a team, and that we always hear athletes talk about. Like it was the crowd that helped me, gave me
that push.
that push to have that winning goal, and so that's a friendly reminder to everybody is, take a moment today and congratulate someone that maybe, they don't have to win a competition. Sometimes it's showing up for their session. Maybe they did something at work, and even for employers too. Like celebrate your employees too, and help them get better, because at the end of the day, this is what we're here. We're here to help each other. We're a tribe. Once again, we're all a big tribe, and like imagine. I always tell my coaches, and that's one of the things that I've always told them, that if we continue to grow, we're all gonna grow together. And I always tell them, like, it wouldn't be any fun if we ever we made it to that dream where we're able to buy the yacht, and then it's just me by myself.
You'd be solo.
You know what I mean? Like, no, we're all going in the yacht. Like
Yeah.
we're all gonna be able to do it together. And if you're going to win, then you have to help everybody else win around you too. And what I'm seeing in your class is it's amazing, because you have Laura that is losing a bunch of weight. She helped you to lose weight, right? And then we have Nayeli in there. We have Araceli. We have Naomi. You have Edgar. You have everybody in there. So, once again, I challenge all of you to help each other out and continue to hold each other accountable and say, like, hey, we're all making this happen. This year, we're all losing 30 pounds.
I challenge them.
You know
I'm down
what I
for
mean?
that. Yeah.
And we're all gonna fix this, weight that we're unhappy with. But it's beyond that. We have made an amazing friendship, and we're gonna use this friendship to encourage ourselves to grow versus to encourage ourselves to go drink more alcohol and put ourselves in a deeper hole than what we're already in. And once again, it just takes one person to have the conversation, because I think everybody's waiting for one of them,
One to do it. Yeah.
one to do it. And once it comes out, it's like, all right, we're all on board, right? And then it's like you have those groups. Hey, come on, get your diet.
No, it's cool because I mean, randomly, like like we went hiking before the Spartan. We would all go out together. So, we do have those activities. It kind of stopped for a little bit, but I know Naomi and Nayeli, they posted they went running. Edgar, goes
so
running.
cool.
And they they're doing activities together, and it's cool. And everything started from the gym.
Yeah,
And everything started here, and it's cool, because even when we're here in class, like if Edgar sees me drop a weight, he'll be like, "Come on, let's go, compa." If I see him, I tell him. If the girls see each other, like they push each other.
Yeah.
And the environment in our class is great. And because even I might have friendship with all of them, but if I see like Erika or the older ladies that are there, and and they're struggling, like I push them too. I'm like, come on, let's go. And it's a great environment. Yeah,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last question. So what is next for Caesar? Let's go. Obviously, health wise, and let's go personal as well. What are something that you're striving towards?
Well, I mean, health wise, I want to continue losing weight. I want to hit 180, which I haven't been 180 probably since high school, since forever. So I want to try to hit 180,
Which you will.
which I will.
Right.
And that, And once I hit that, I want to maintain it. Try to stay around the 180. Um, that's basically my main goal. Health wise, in a personal level, I wanna, you know, right now I live in my dad's house and then, like, I'm renting off of him. But in the future, I want Laura and I to have our own, something of our own. See my kids obviously succeed. We have one that's gonna leave out of the country to go study. Um, so that's amazing to know that she's leaving,
Yeah,
and
that's
she's gonna do
huge.
her thing. She's gonna do her thing. So see my kids succeed, see them grow, see them um, obviously better habits, and just have Laura and I be the leaders of those habits. Um, but yeah, those are one thing. Those are
So a home,
home. Yeah,
a
like
home,
I picture us, in a home.
and you will.
Around, yeah.
So it's just a matter of following the plan,
Hmm.
right? Sticking to the plan, and we obviously have the network here. So if there's anybody else,
Hmm.
anybody who's out there who can help them figure out the process and help them create a game plan for that, it's all achievable.
Yeah.
Right? It's all doable, and I think that's one thing that you've learned along the way here. That as long as you stick to the game plan, and I always talk about this. If it happens now or if it happens in 2 years, it doesn't matter. It's going to happen,
Yeah, I mean,
right?
I don't see it happening like now, especially because we have our daughter leaving and studying, and we want to help her first.
Right.
We want to make sure
She's taken care of.
she's taken care of and she gets the help. But that's something that like I would love, not now because we want to help her,
Right.
but yeah, after.
That's amazing, man.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure
Yes.
talking to you, and this became a more of a dad talk,
It did.
and I think that's great because not a lot of men have the opportunity to have a man-to-man conversation, and I think it's something that probably mostly women are gonna listen to, but maybe you should have your husband listen to this because it's stuff that's gonna resonate with them. And I challenge all the dads out there too to take a moment and you know speak to someone about your emotions, because I think for me it made a huge difference. Once again, my behavior, I just always very angry. Didn't really understand it why. To this point, I still try. It's something that's really hard to get rid of, right? This really hard look and intense behavior. But it's getting better, and it's helped me by telling my story, by opening up, by getting all these emotions out. Because once again, if you don't get them out, it's a ticking bomb. At some point, it's all gonna come out, and it's all gonna come out in the wrong way. And then obviously, a lot of people around you could get hurt in some sort of way. So, um, I'm a big fan of pushing for less macho community, more like let's have a conversation. Let's push women to become successful. Let's push them to have their own dreams. Um, because I think we're both humans are both capable of doing something, and I'd want to see my son grow up with a very strong woman and a very strong man leading him and being part of his team. So that's my
Yeah.
message out.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in my household, it wasn't really a machismo thing. My dad and mom, they both had their ways of thinking and stuff. But,
Mm,
you know, my dad, I never really saw a machismo type of guy,
mm,
you know. Yeah. With my mom, and especially because my mom's so hard. She's a really
mm,
hard person. But yeah, I mean, I obviously, I have a great communication with my wife. We talk, especially about the kids, and yeah, I mean, she's like you said, like it would be nice for a community to, have something like that. And I feel that in my case, I do have a strong wife, and I do have, that person that she can do anything she wants in life, and she's proven. She's been through hard things, and I was there to witness them, and just she's just amazing. And I wish, there's, like you said, sometimes we don't know what other people go through, and I know that especially in our gym community, like I think like 80% of or the members are all females, and it's nice to see them out here and pushing themselves. And like in our little group, I know the girls talk amongst each other and help each other out, and it's cool. And sometimes I think the guys, as guys, we also need that, just to talk and help each other out.
Yeah, 100%. We need to push guys to talk more.
Yeah.
We'll start the men's group very soon. Well, thank you everybody for listening in. Cesar, thank you for being here.
No, thank you for having me.
Good luck with the future. Good shout out to Laura for doing amazing work with your family. And shout out to the 5 p.m. or 5 a.m.
5 a.m.
Oh, I'm going to get in trouble. 5 a.m. group. And obviously to all Envision for being a part of our community. So thank you all. Have a good day.
Thank you.